the original work of Su Qing's autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage. Chapter 15. Start submission soon. Classes started at Xi'an's University. He was studying law, and he only had night classes from 6 to 9 p.m. every day. He teaches in a middle school during the day, and his salary is not much. He comes and goes in a hurry, and rarely gets together with me. Motherlin was a smart person and soon became familiar with everything in Shanghai, so I didn't have to worry about housework. I only had to make some calculations about money. I was embarrassed to ask Xian for money, and Xian seemed afraid to ask for money from his family. This is human nature, but one thing he was not good at was that he only cared about his own difficulties and did not care about the difficulties of others. He always thinks that he is married and has a daughter. He cannot support himself and has to take money from his family every month, which is the most shameless thing. Therefore, whenever I asked him for something, his expression would change and he would look very ugly, as if he was blaming me for being too inconsiderate. If you ask for it from me, who should I ask for it from? However, he did not say this out loud, but I also have my own thoughts. There are several things to do when I open the door. Oil, salt, firewood, rice? Which one should I save? Motherlin has worked so hard for us. How can we ask her to pay for it? I don't go out to work like him, and my married daughter can no longer ask for money from her mother. I don't have the accumulation. If I don't ask for it from you, who will I ask for it from? So whenever he changes, when I saw the color, I couldn't help but think of this sentence, but I didn't say it out loud. And the look in my eyes was always a bit angry. Once, just like this, everyone finally spoke out. First, Motherlin told me that a bucket of rice was almost finished, so I turned around and told him that there was no more rice at home. I was too hasty when I said it, because Motherlin had not left yet. Hearing this, his face suddenly sank and he said, "If you don't have any rice, go buy it." I also sank my face, thinking not to get angry, but when I saw Mrs. Lin beside me, I refused to be outdone and said, "Where's the money?" Unexpectedly, he answered simply, "I don't know that." I was so angry that my fingers were cold, and I knew in my heart that he had his grievances, but I couldn't be blamed for that. I am asking for money from you, but I am not spending it blindly. I am cooking food for everyone to eat, especially the servant. You can't ask her to starve with you. If she hears such unreasonable words, it will make my mother sad in the future. So I secretly glanced at Lin's mother to see how she would react after hearing this. From this glance, I could see that her face was elongated and she had no choice but to interrupt. She seemed to be saying in her heart, "Why is there such an unreasonable uncle in the world? A man. Miss, I think you are too honest." I felt a wave of embarrassment and grievance in my heart and wanted to laugh at him, but I couldn't bear it, so I burst into tears. Not only was he not grateful and regretful when he saw it, but he became furious. He took a step forward and pointed at me and wrote, "If you think I'm poor, give me money. I'm a human being and you are a human being too. You ask me for money?" I was so angry now that I shed my tears and sneered, "I'm not afraid of starving to death if I go out. I'm really unlucky to be married to a man like you who can only be a parasite. Say it." Finally, I felt a burst of joy in my heart, and I didn't think about the other party's embarrassment. I saw his eyes opened, even his neck turned red, and he shouted, "If you want to go out, get out immediately," he said and stepped forward. He grabbed my hair and started to use force, which scared me because I never expected him to use force. Motherlin became even more panicked and tried her best to separate the two of us while he gasped for breath, ran out and downstairs without looking back. I couldn't help but sob and cry. My tears fell like broken beads one after another, and I couldn't stop them anymore. I don't know what Mrs. Lin was trying to persuade me. I didn't hear it at first, but then her anger gradually subsided. I saw her twisting a handkerchief to persuade me to wipe my tears and said, "Miss, please don't argue with him anymore. All men are like firewood." I couldn't fight with them because of my temper. Instead, they made people laugh. I reluctantly took the handkerchief and wiped my face. He didn't come when we were having dinner. I was so annoyed and worried that I refused to eat. Look, it's already 9:15. Could it be that he was so angry that he stopped paying attention to me? Could it be that the more I thought about it, the less interesting it became, and I simply went to Huangpu? Mother Lin had eaten haphazardly and came in to persuade me not to be upset and eat, but to take care of myself. She also said that I wonder how my mother would be sad if she found out. I couldn't help but cry again. I refused to eat anyway, so I simply took off my clothes and went to bed. Curled up in bed alone, unable to sleep no matter what. I could clearly hear footsteps in the alley approaching from afar to the door, but I walk over again, and it turned out to be a man from someone else's family. One time I actually heard the sound of the back door unlocking. My heart was beating so fast that I quickly covered myself up and pretended to be asleep. But then I heard the man open the door and walk straight to the landlady's room downstairs. I waited like this until 11:30, and I put on my clothes. I thought something must have happened to him, so I sucked on my slippers and quietly walked downstairs. I heard Mother Lin shouting from the back room, "Miss, go to the kitchen. What are you doing? I'll get it for you." I said no, because I hated her for being so easy to wake up. After going down the stairs, I gently opened the back door and stood for a while on the night street. The cold air hit my skin and the electric light was dim yellow. I wonder where should I go to find him at such a late hour. Besides, I was only wearing a pair of slippers, so I had better go back to my room quickly. When I got back to the room, it was already 12 o'clock. I have never waited for someone so infatuatedly. I bit my thumb fiercely, cursing myself secretly for being ignorant. What does it matter if I don't have a man? Didn't he tell you to earn your own living? What use does such a man need from him? Of course, my rational answer is that there are 10,000 people who don't need him, but I can't let him wander outside all night. Maybe he is dancing, maybe he has encountered an accident. But among these two maybes, I would rather choose the latter, because if he dies from now on, I will always miss him, always confess to him, and always regard him as a legendary hero. But if he was bored outside, so I will never forgive him. He only wants to think about hugging and kissing another woman. How dirty it is. But Ruixian won't come back from Qingdao, right? Just as I was thinking about it, he came. He staggered in drunkenly, with a fierce look in his eyes. I was scared and angry, so I leaned over on the bed and ignored him. He sat down heavily at the table and asked Malin to bring him some water. Malin ran out in a panic with his pants crossed. I felt disgusted, but I was afraid that he would use verse again, so I didn't dare to say anything. He washed his face, drank 2 sips of tea, and then started smoking cigarettes one after another. Mother Lin said tremblingly, "Uncle, please go to bed early." He hummed and waved his hand to tell Mother Lin to retreat. I couldn't help but feel a little timid. He stood up suddenly, took out a roll of banknotes from his suit trouser pocket, threw it at me, and said, "Take it." I couldn't help but get angry and wanted to throw it back at him, but I was afraid that he would be violent again. Secondly, I am really in a hurry to buy rice. But despite saying this, she didn't reach out to pick it up. She just choked slightly in order to impress his loving heart. Sure enough, he came over to me pretending to be drunk and talked a lot of nonsense. And then we reconciled. Otherwise, I would never be able to feel relieved, thinking that I would make some money to show you. And I would fight for every piece of it. It saves face and makes it more comfortable. However, I have no acquaintances in Shanghai. I often see the news and feel that there are many recruitment advertisements. I was overjoyed and wrote many self-recommendation letters, some of which were accompanied by a composition, in regular script, etc. But the result was like nothing, with no news at all. As a result, I had no time to wait for work. Well, I repeatedly urged Mother Lin to have a good time. When the letter comes, don't deliver it in front of my uncle. You have to hide it somewhere else, and wait for it to be handed to me quietly when no one is round. This makes Lin Ma also confused. In fact, I'm afraid that Su Xian will be embarrassed if things don't work out, so I'll have to give him a surprise in the future. Sometimes I think it would be better to find a British female teacher to practice English conversation, so that I have more chances to find a job. But I have found a few because the tuition is too expensive, and I am afraid to speak up every day for small cases. Where can I still ask for tuition fees? In fact, Xian has been giving me more money recently. Since the last quarrel, he has obviously tried hard to get money. The banknotes he threw at me when he got drunk that night were the salary advance from the middle school where he teaches. I was very sad, and I wished I could help him earn some money to supplement the family income. and it would be best if I could not let him know about the accident. I bought a lot of newspapers in order to find a career. Xian was very surprised. Could it be that I was studying journalism carefully? I also think this is too wasteful, because if you want to read a newspaper, you can go to the middle school where you teach, or you can read it at the university where you study, and you don't need to buy it yourself. Later, I learned to be good. I just chatted with a nearby newspaper vendor a few times and borrowed some newspapers from him to read. After reading them, I felt embarrassed not to buy any of them, so I bought 2 magazines from him. When I was bored after dinner, I took it out and said I bought it specifically to relieve your boredom. He was very surprised and asked me if I had seen it. I replied that I was busy knitting and didn't like to see those. He loved it. I don't know if men are like this in general, or if it's just my son. He seems to be unhappy with me being a scholar and reading newspapers and books at home. He wanted me to pretend to be a child and just have fun and dress up so that I could act like a spoiled child to him. But when something happened, I would act like a serious housewife, supervising the servants to clean the room, buy and cook side dishes, and copy notes for him, political reform exam papers, and the like. He doesn't like that I have ambition, and he doesn't want me to be eager to learn. I think that in this case, why did I need to marry a female student in the first place? This is probably due to the psychological differences between men and women. Men can get along with the most vulgar and obscene woman, as long as she is beautiful and knowledge is irrelevant. Not only that, if a woman's knowledge is too high, even if she is not ugly, it will actually make men stay away from her. This is not the case for women. At least for me personally, I would rather follow a man who is educated and has status. Otherwise, no matter how beautifully he dresses, if he turns out to be a barber or something, I will never have sex with him. Feeling good. And for this kind of smooth guy with oily hair and pink face, I really can't see the so-called beauty in him. I know Xian doesn't like me reading, but I am more interested in reading. When I have nothing to do at home, I often read his law and social science books. And I often take notes and write them down, preparing to write my own papers of more than 10,000 words. Unexpectedly, once Lin Ma tried to compliment me to please Xian, but it backfired. She said, "Young lady is really hardworking, the top female scholar. As long as you go out, she will open the book to read." Really, she doesn't play cards, doesn't watch plays, and doesn't like to play anything. Xian didn't wait for her to finish, and said to me with a gloomy face, "Oh, no wonder. I told you to correct the test papers quickly, but you didn't correct them. It turns out that you are busy studying. However, top female scholar, I have to warn you, please don't go through my bookcase in the future. I hate people messing with my things the most." After saying that, he immediately locked the bookcase door. I felt disgusted, thinking that you didn't read books all day, and you didn't allow anyone to read them. It was really unreasonable, but you didn't allow me to read them. So I had to read them secretly while crying. So I made up my mind and saved a few cents from my vegetable money every day. And I could buy a humor magazine with 10 cents. I liked this magazine very much. Once, I also submitted a comic poetry to it. Of course, these humorous things were not made by me, and the words were very ordinary, but they didn't get published for a long time, and I was disappointed. Later, I wrote another article about giving birth to boys and raising girls. There were quite a few complaints here, and it couldn't be considered completely humorous. After writing it, I decided to treat it as a matter of fact. Hope often leads to disappointment, but sometimes there are unexpected things. The editor's reply came. I can't forget how excited that day was for me. Cheka was about to turn 2 years old. When I was planning to make a set of small clothes for her, Lin's mother brought a piece of paper up. My heart was pounding, and I read on dizzily. It was a ready-printed postcard. The content roughly said, "I received your manuscript. Very good. And it will be published in the XTH issue of our magazine." This issue was not published yet, but I was happy enough. If it was published, it would be published. What's the big deal if it was late? So I quickly wrote the second article, and I was ready to send it as soon as it was published in the next issue. But it was not published in the next issue, and the third time. I thought that the editor must be making fun of me, asking me to spend an extra dime every issue to find my article. Isn't it an unexpected loss? so I decided not to buy it for the fourth time. But I couldn't help but take another look at it when I walked past the newspaper layout. After a few steps, I turned back reluctantly. One dime. I decided not to buy shredded pork tomorrow. I opened the catalog and saw, my God, wasn't my name there? This joy was extraordinary. Having my name placed behind the great writer, I felt as if I had become a king on equal footing with him. So I quickly bought a copy and went home, my face full of smiles. Before Motherlin could ask me anything when she saw me, I grabbed her and said, Motherlin, here is my article. It's about raising clusters and being with so-and-so's party. It's a pity that you can't read. She seemed very happy to hear that, and hurriedly asked, who is so-and-so? Is he raising children too? What is this book about? Do they talk about raising boys? Is there any way to do that? Miss, you can write books now. Why don't you keep a copy for me to see? So I said I should send it to my mother, but told her not to tell Xian. And when I get the royalties in the future, I can send it to my mother to make her happy. Motherlin didn't know what the manuscript fee was. After I explained it to her, she said happily, there's money. It's really amazing. Miss, you have so many articles in your mind that you can exchange them for money as long as you write. Tomorrow you should read less and write more when you have time, so as to avoid asking your son-in-law for money. I was very unhappy that she mentioned this kind of thing again. About 10 days later, the manuscript fee receipt was mailed, and I was asked to stamp it and go to the agency to pick it up. I hesitated for a while, thinking that there was no one else to ask for it, and Motherlin didn't know it, so I had to go to pick it up myself. But I was afraid that they would see through me and I would be embarrassed. 5 yuan. I looked at this note that I had worked so hard for, and felt that the most glorious and greatest thing in the world was just this. After all, it was 5 yuan, and I couldn't give it up. So I quickly changed my clothes and took the tram to a magazine agency. I tried to pretend to be calm and handed in a receipt, and the other party also handed over the money calmly, without even glancing at me, let alone looking at me. Don't they want to meet such a female writer? No. They never guessed that I would come in person. They thought I might just be a friend of hers. If they knew that I was her, the one who wrote this article and received this royalty, they would be so panicked. They might surround me and ask for my autograph, just like they surround movie stars. Well, I'd better not let them see it. My signature style is not very good. I need to practice it at home. On the way back with the royalty, I felt really proud, as if everyone on the road was looking at me sideways. This is the author of a certain article, and she is still so young, a 21-year-old young female writer. But should I let them know that I already have a baby, Kyuka, and it's already 2 years old? Alas, I really regret using this title. However, to my disappointment, no one on the road seemed to recognize me. It was Yan. When I bought a bag of barbecued pork and was waiting to come back to drink, I hoped that he would shout as soon as he entered the door, "You bad guy! Why did you write articles for me and submit them to magazines? Today I found out and let me punish you?" So I immediately ran up to him, held his face and smiled. "You deserve to be punished. You deserve to be punished. Brother Xian, I have bought a bag of barbecued pork to treat you to a drink." So he held my hand and we sat down to toast each other. Of course, he had to return the money he spent on the wine and barbecued pork to me, as it was his gift to congratulate me, and I could take the money back to show my filial piety. But these were all fantasies. In fact, he ate my barbecued pork and wine, looked cold, and threw the magazine away without even looking at it. 2 days later, the magazine sent a letter asking me to write more articles in the future. I quickly sent out another article I had written. 2 days later, the magazine wrote again saying that the manuscript had been received and it was very good. There was also another letter attached. When I opened it, I was greatly surprised to find that Yubai had also seen my article. He was preparing for another magazine and asked me to write an article quickly. So my life as a writer began.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.